Hello, hello. Welcome everybody. Hi Ryan, good to see you.
Hi, Ryan.
Julian. Hi, thanks for joining us. Scott, hello. Just kind of waiting for everybody to join in here. All right. So while the rest of the folks are popping on, we're going to get started because we're going to be on time today. So welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jillian LeClaire and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Florida Tech. And what that means is I can organize fun events and programming for our alumni to stay connected to Florida Tech and to your fellow alumni through virtual events and hopefully soon through in-person events again. So thank you for joining us for our very first Alumni Impacts event, which is a new virtual interview series featuring alumni who are making a difference in their fields. The event today will be an hour long, and we'll reserve some time at the end for you to ask our special guest your own questions. And I'll just ask everyone to please leave your microphone on mute throughout the duration of the interview. We all know nobody likes audio feedback in the middle of an event, so please keep it on mute for the time being. Appreciate that. And now I'm going to introduce our special guest. I'm pleased to welcome Angie Lastman, class of 2012 and 2014. Angie is an American Meteorological Society certified broadcast meteorologist with a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Meteorology, both from Florida Tech. She is currently a part of the First Alert weather team for NBC6 WTVJ in Miami, Florida, where she anchors and produces weather segments as well as creates environmental climate stories for weekly segments. She received a Bronze Telly Award for her work on the documentary Unprecedented, a Climate Check Special, which I'm a big fan of, and a Suncoast Regional Emmy Award for the NBC6 First Alert Hurricane Special. So welcome, Angie. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Don't worry about saying meteorological, messing it up, because that happens to me all the time and it's my job. So,
you know, I swear I practiced it 10 times and still.
It's even hard to spell and I have to spell it all the time. So, and I consider myself a pretty good speller, but you know, it's a difficult one.
Thank you for making me feel better. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you today.
Thank you. So it looks like you're back in the studio. So are you back full time?
I am back officially. You know, it was a long, essentially year of working from home, but I just came back on Monday and now I'm full-time here at NBC6, which is in South Florida, in Miramar to be exact. So it's good to be back in the studio, good to see my coworkers, all that good stuff.
Yeah, what a long hiatus. That must have been challenging doing segments from, did you do them from your house?
I did them from my couch in my living room. You know, if someone would have asked me 2 years ago or brought up the fact that you can work from home and be on TV, I would have said, yeah, right, that's never going to happen. But obviously COVID opened some doors in that way for us to kind of figure it out. And we were one of the first station groups in the country to send all of our meteorologists home. So early March, we were already sending everybody home, setting people up. I never had a green screen in my house, but I did have, you know, a little iPad that had a system for me to connect to my control room at the studio, and I could go live. I could control my own graphics from my own laptop. So we figured it out. It was a transitional kind of period, but it worked out, and you know, I could sit on my couch and do my job at the same time.
That's the coolest thing. And I watched a few of your segments and they came out great. So kudos to you guys for figuring that out. Like, you know, the rest of the world did for all of our areas. You made it look really good. So
well, thanks. I tried. It took a little work with your setup in your background. You know, you don't really know what you have to do in that moment to make it look good on TV. And it was, like I said, it was a transitional period, but it worked out, and it obviously was the safest option for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to jump into some questions. And before we get into questions about your current career, I want to know about where you came from. Like, what's your background growing up? Did you always want to be a broadcast meteorologist? Was that something that kind of came up later on, maybe at Florida Tech?
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. I played volleyball. So kind of when I was figuring out what I wanted to do with school and where I wanted to go, that was a main driver, obviously, of taking me to Florida Tech. I ended up getting a scholarship and I played volleyball there. But my subject matter, or what I was going to go into, my degree, kind of came about because of my mom. She's lovely. I call her my momager, but in the kind of deciding factor of me figuring out what I was going to do and what I wanted to be, I really always had a passion for communicating and talking to people. I got in trouble all the time growing up in school for being the chatty kid in class. And I really like to communicate, but I was also good at math and science. And, part of me was like, should I be an actress? Should I do something in performing? And then there was a more logical part that was like, no, I'm not really going to move to Hollywood and try to be famous, am I? So my lovely mother, she kind of was like, you like weather, you're interested in weather, you're interested in math and science, and you're a good communicator. So you should look at being a broadcast meteorologist. And so that kind of set me on a path to find a place where I could play volleyball, but more importantly, I could get a really good degree that set me up to have a great career, and made me feel like I knew what I was talking about on TV. I didn't just want to be someone that kind of was a person on TV. I wanted to actually know the science. I wanted to have a good understanding of that, because as lame as it sounds, we end up having, safety of people's lives in our hands. So I wanted to make sure that I had a great understanding and a good grasp of the subject. And Florida Tech was a place that I could do all of that. And, I grew up in Michigan, so why not move to the Sunshine State and not freeze in the winter walking to class? So it ended up to be a really, really good decision for me. Obviously, I stayed there for many years, 6 years, because I liked it so much.
I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful campus. I love working here. That's so cool that you kind of had interest in the arts and then also science, and you found a way to kind of marry them together and do something really cool and useful.
Yeah. And I think that as a 17-year-old trying to figure out where I should go to school, I wouldn't have been able to do that without the perspective of my mom to kind of bring up this career path that seemed to fit me really well. And I just didn't want to be a person that dreaded going to work every day. And honestly, I can say now, like, sure, my commute is treacherous at times living in Miami, but otherwise my job is very fun and enjoyable, and it's different every day. So being able to have that communication side of it, the art side, like you said, and then the scientific part that keeps my brain working, and I have a very puzzle oriented brain. It works really well for forecasting. And, there's a fun side of it and there's a serious side of it too, because obviously we have hurricanes and all that kind of stuff. So it ended up being a really good, combination of all these things that I was interested in.
That's fantastic. I feel like that's what everyone going through college really dreams of is, you pick something that you're interested in, not quite being quite sure usually how you're going to apply it and still make money and then still have a great time and enjoy what you're doing. So we're happy that one of our alumna it has a great successful career that you're happy with. So
I'm happy too. Trust me. I'm very happy. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I ended up here. Like, it was a lot of work, but to like your job every day is definitely something to be grateful for sure.
Yeah. So I'll get to in a couple questions, like how you got to where you are, but going back to Florida Tech, what was your experience like on campus? And were there specific moments throughout your studies that were kind of pivotal at kind of pushing you into the field that you're in?
Yeah, I was there for 6 years. So as any experience, there's ups and there's downs, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. Obviously, volleyball was a great experience for me. I made tons of friends, and that whole aspect of life in college was great. Studies were really hard. I was a great student in high school, but it was a totally different ballgame once I got to Florida Tech. That was a little bit of an adjustment period for me. At times I was like, can I do this? And, I ended up doing it. I ended up obviously getting my master's there too. So it was a great experience. It definitely made me, it was an experience that I was driven in, and it made me have a little bit more, toughness because it was so difficult. The math and the science, I don't think I realized going in what I was getting myself into. But there was also a sense of accomplishment once I finished, especially once I finished my master's. If you would have asked me if I would have a master's in meteorology, I would have probably laughed years before that because it was so difficult, especially when I was a freshman. Chemistry, biology, you're just kind of adjusting to all that. But as far as specific moments, there was a point when I graduated with my undergrad and I was kind of deciding whether I wanted to move forward and get my master's or not. I still had scholarship offered for volleyball and time to play. So it essentially was a good decision financially, but I had a lot of outside voices giving me career advice, people that were already in my industry saying, you don't need a master's to be on TV to tell the weather. I mean, you can just go and start your career. So that was a little bit of a kind of weighing my options at that point. And I ended up, again, thanks to my parents, I ended up going on and getting my master's, doing the really hard thing that I didn't want to do. And when I applied for my job at NBC6 in South Florida, that was one of the main reasons that I was, one, considered, and two, why I got the job. They looked at that, especially the chief meteorologist, and he was very impressed by that because, again, a lot of people that you see on TV are just telling the weather. They're not necessarily meteorologists, let alone having a master's in it. So the level that, it for lack of a better word, it leveled me up to kind of be in a position that I am now, all thanks to that master's program. So that was definitely a pivotal choice of mine that led me to where I am today. There were so many things. Dr. Mall, my favorite person in life. I mean, he was very influential in my entire program there. He gave me tons of opportunity and was just like a great mentor and kind of leading me. And then in the communications department too, Dr. Edwards, she was great with kind of leading me on that aspect and showing me how to be a presenter at all. Because again, I was focused mainly on the science for most of it, but she helped me kind of hone my craft there as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if you're becoming someone who's on TV, a TV personality, what is that training like in terms of speaker training? How did she kind of help you along that path?
Yeah, I took a speech class with her, and that was essentially the extent. I took writing classes and stuff with her too, but my speech class was the extent of really presentation that I had as far as experience goes from Florida Tech, because again, I was going to school for a science-based program with a minor in communications. I wasn't in a broadcast school. And at first, when I was transitioning into my career, that really worried me, but I did have experience in internships, and I had one in Orlando, I had one in Detroit, and that kind of got my feet wet as far as the broadcast industry and even knowing how to be on TV, because essentially I really didn't know at all how to be on TV.
Well, no one does until they do, right? I mean, take it easy on yourself.
Yeah, it's true. But most people really go to school for broadcast, or at least broadcast meteorology. And so I didn't have that kind of experience. So my first job was essentially a very big learning experience of just figuring out, how to move my hands on TV, how to talk on TV, just all those kind of things that you figure out as you go. And that's what I did in my first job, which was in Northwest Missouri.
Okay. So when you were talking about applying for a job and your master's kind of setting you apart, was that job or the one in Miami, or both?
Well, I'm sure it played a role in my first job, but it more specifically was my job here in Miami that they told me when I was in my interview, this is really impressive that you have your master's. None of the other candidates had this, and this set you apart. And then obviously once I got the job, I got all the inside details of my interview. And again, they were like, this was one of the reasons that you were even brought in to be interviewed. And it's something that set you apart that got you the job.
Well, that's great advice for any, students who are watching this now or watch it later. It can kind of set you apart from what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely.
So talking about your career path, take us through. So right after graduation, what was the trajectory of your career like?
So after graduation, I I didn't want to start my job. I wanted to go play professional volleyball in Europe. And I kind of like weighed that back and forth. And again, my parents swayed me against that.
The parents.
I know, parents, they just have all the answers, right? So I ended up in Northwest Missouri, in essentially the middle of nowhere. I moved there probably a week after graduation, and I packed up all my stuff, and I then lived in Northwest Missouri, which was, it was shocking to say
A little different than Florida.
Yeah, I didn't live by the beach anymore. Instead, I lived by the Missouri River. So there was a whole different aspect of life that I kind of pushed myself into. And so how it works in television, there's all different markets ranging from population size that they cover. So like New York is number 1, number 2 is LA, Miami is 16. And out of all the places in the country that have TV stations, there are 210 based on population, and I was in 201. So like you can tell, I really started at the bottom, but it was a wonderful experience as far as I got to do everything. I got to, like I said earlier, talk or figure out how to be on TV, figure out how to act on TV, all those kinds of things that I was worried about with regards to broadcasting. And I got to do a lot of jobs. I wasn't just a meteorologist. Of course, I worked on that and I did that every day, but I learned how to produce, I learned how to anchor, I learned how to report, all things that have really served me later in my career and helped me be more well-rounded. So it was a great experience. I was there for 2 years, and then I came to Miami in 2016. And I've been here ever since, and I'll probably be here for a little longer as long as they'll keep me.
I mean, it seems like a great place to live and work.
It is a great place to live and work. I was very grateful to get the job. Once they called me and told me that I got the job, I was stunned. I was thrilled. And it's again been a really great experience ever since. I've had so many opportunities here too. So hopefully it keeps getting better. Nice.
This is completely unrelated to your career, but I want to know what your favorite thing is about living in Miami.
Oh my gosh, the culture. It's, I grew up in Detroit, so we have culture there too. There's plenty of there's lots of diversity there, and it's a great place to live too. But the culture in Miami is like no other. And obviously the weather is nice too. Plenty of sunshine. The hurricanes I could do without, but
as we all could. Yeah.
It's a unique city to live in. I really like it here. I truly cannot complain about living here, except for the traffic that I could do without. But otherwise, it's.
I mean, all the best places in the world have lots of traffic, so.
Exactly, the pros and the cons.
Yes, exactly. So we have 2 folks who typed in the chat that they are current students. Oh, cool. So this question is for them. What advice would you give to any current Florida Tech students for how to best get started in the broadcast journalism or meteorology industry? And I know you already talked about a little bit about that, but what do you wish you would have known when you started out?
Man, what do I wish I would have known? I think that I mentioned interning, and that was a really great opportunity for me. I can't recommend that enough. I'm not sure if it's part of the curriculum now or how that works with Florida Tech, but it is an experience that is well worth it to go and do, maybe more than once, but at least once for sure. And while you're there, it's hard being a student, especially if you're in those last couple of years, you're trying to check all the boxes, you're trying to balance a lot of things, but really making the most out of your internship. I don't know that I did that. I definitely learned a lot in my first one, but by the time my second one rolled around, I was like, okay, I need to experience everything. And part of why I say that is because I think I didn't ask questions that I wanted to ask because I was worried about asking a dumb question. And it's, now that I think about it, the questions that I was thinking in those moments, I could have sped up my learning process by just asking them. So the moral of the story is take the opportunity and then make the most out of it. And don't be afraid to ask the questions. I mean, I remember my first job, somebody said to me, Angie, we need you to do a package. And like, I was already working at this job and I was like, what the heck is a package? Like, but I couldn't ask the question because they were like, she must know, she works here. So I'm over here Googling. If I would have just asked these questions in the moment of my internship, and furthermore, if I would have had a mentor, now it's so easy to connect with people. If you're a student watching this, it's easy to connect with me. You can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, I'm on Facebook too. Like you can connect with these people and communicate with them that maybe are in those roles that you aspire to have. And that is a shortcut to getting there because they've experienced it. They have wisdom that you don't have. Yes. Also, Scott says LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn too. So
Scott's your PR person.
Scott. But again, like you can connect and have a mentor that's going to help you in ways that you don't even know. So that's probably my biggest advice. Just get through school. You can do it. And then really take in all the experiences and stuff and then connect with people. Because obviously networking is huge, especially in this industry. It's very small.
Yeah. That's great advice. And now the alumni office, I don't know if you've seen this, Angie, but we just launched a new online networking tool that's exclusive for Florida Tech alumni. So if the students who are watching or the alumni who are watching, if you haven't joined yet, it's FloridaTechConnect.com. And we have a mentoring feature on there. So people looking to offer mentoring can go and seek out people who are looking for mentorship opportunities. And that's a really great way to network as well.
Again, I can't stress it enough. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk to people, whether it's prepping for a job interview or just, hey, what is it like to work there? And what is it like to be in this industry, the pros and cons, all of that stuff I'm happy to talk to people about. So again, you know where you can find me.
Well, that's very generous, Angie. Thank you. So now you're working for NBC6 in Miami, like you said. What's your favorite part about your job?
Ooh,
if you can pick one, you can say a couple things.
I think, well, there's a couple aspects. The communicating and like meeting people and engaging with people. Obviously, it's a little different with COVID these days, but my job takes me to very cool events, very interesting places, sometimes difficult places, but there's always really unique and interesting people to meet and stories to tell. So that would have to be the number one thing that I really love about my job. Traveling to Australia for a story that I worked on was amazing. And again, you just get to engage with people that you would never come across in life. And I also get access to very smart people that, in all different industries and that I get to learn from and ask questions and interrogate at times. So it's those kinds of experiences, the opportunities that I've got from this job that I'm really grateful for. And then it's different every single day. I do something different. So I'm easily bored by things and I don't think I could ever be bored by this job because I'm doing something different every day, whether it's just the forecast changing or, I'm reporting or I'm doing weather stories or whatever it is. It's different every day and it's fun to work here. So I think that's the thing that I like the most.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe I should give it a try now.
Recruiting everybody on this call right now.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge that those working in your industry are currently facing?
Becoming obsolete, I think, because, technology, other forms of media, you have Netflix, you have YouTube, all of these things that have changed really the landscape of media and how people digest it, how people can consume it. So, apps in general, weather apps, that's a big thing for us. I'm a millennial and so many of my friends say to me, well, I don't watch the news because I could just pull up my phone and look at the forecast. And you can look at the forecast and you can find the limited information that you might need to make a decision on if you go to brunch or not. But when it comes to those big events like hurricanes and, extreme heat or whatever it may be, there isn't really another place that you can go for interactive conversation with a scientist that's an expert on it. So I think finding our footing in this new kind of landscape of media is going to be really difficult for local news.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen kind of struggles in that way, and finding how we can adapt to it and evolve is going to be really important. We've already seen some kinds of indications of companies going in that direction, making more digital newscasts and stuff like that, and having a better digital platform and utilizing social media more. But that's gonna be hard. I mean, I'm sure it's no surprise to you, anyone on this call. It's different to get, especially millennials, to watch television news.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's more about storytelling on environment and climate, and trying to just educate people in that way, because to set us apart, because you can get your forecast essentially on your phone or wherever else.
Right. So it's all this like these value added components you can do. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. Again, I think being like a station scientist, we call it, is really an important aspect of the job, because you're connecting the dots for people in a way that maybe they couldn't by just looking on their phone.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that. I will say, if I need a quick update, I'll look on my phone, but I love having the news on in the morning as I'm getting ready, because otherwise the house is kind of quiet, and it's just, it's having, bright and cheerful people like you kind of talking, and then I'm kind of getting updates while I'm getting ready for work. So that's how I kind of integrate it into the day.
Yeah. And I don't think you're alone in that. There's a lot of people that especially morning news is part of their routine.
It's comforting.
Yeah. It's a thing to kind of get your day started, especially if it's, like you said, bright and cheery. But again, millennials, I don't know the millennials or Gen Zers.
Yeah.
It's hard for to get them to watch local news. So that's going to be a really big challenge moving forward, I think. But we'll adapt. We'll figure it out. We'll evolve, just like everything.
Just like COVID.
Yeah, just like COVID. Just like everything else.
So moving on to your value-added segments that you were talking about, I think that's something that's really cool about what you do, is your climate check segments. And, I said in your introduction, I'm kind of obsessed with your unprecedented documentary about the wildfires that happened in Australia early last year, because I'm a big, tree hugger, sustainability person. And so I loved watching that. And I'm going to show a clip here for you guys to see, but I highly recommend, if you can find it on YouTube and maybe somewhere else, Angie, but all the episodes are on there. And it's really great. And there are 4 segments: fire and water, wildlife loss, the Great Barrier Reef, and the politics of climate change. And those are all kind of tied into the wildfires. So I'm going to show a quick clip so you guys can kind of see. And there we go.
Weather patterns.
We saw 2 strong climate drivers affecting Australia. One of them was a positive Indian Ocean dipole, which is basically a pattern of sea surface temperatures in the Indian Ocean that causes above average temperature and below average rain in Australia.
This positive dipole was the strongest in 20 years.
We also had a negative southern annular mode at the end of the year. Basically, that caused windier than usual conditions and drier than usual conditions in New South Wales.
But then also we've actually warmed by 1 degree Celsius. So it was all those things coming together in, I guess, the perfect storm of events that really made this summer so extreme.
But these temperatures and winds and drought were amplified by a third distressing factor.
Hello, we have serious climate change going on here.
Scientists have been ringing the alarm on climate change for decades. One of the loudest modern day voices is Dr. Michael Mann, an American climatologist, professor, and author. Mann just happened to be in Sydney on sabbatical during the record-breaking wildfire season.
It's pretty easy to connect the dots on this one. Again, we would not have been seeing such widespread, intense, and fast-spreading fires if it were not for the dryness and the heat due to human-caused climate change.
There's just a brief clip for you guys. And like I said, I highly recommend going on YouTube and watching all 4 parts. Very, very important work. And what a great project to work on. Did you ever think that you would get to work on something like this?
It's really funny because I pitched this half joking, because I was like, they're never going to let me go to Australia. I mean, to go to go out of the country is a lot for a local news station, but to go across the world is it seemed like they were definitely going to say no. And I pitched it to a producer that I had at the time, I mentioned about mentors. He is the number one mentor for me when it comes to storytelling. He has tons of experience, and he really has kind of shaped my career in that aspect. But I pitched it to him and said, hey, can NBC send me to Australia? And he as a joke. And he was like, maybe let's pitch it to the bosses. And we did just that. And days later, I really mean like 48 hours later, I was on a plane to Australia, slightly freaking out because I was like, what did I get myself in? But obviously it turned out really well, and it was very well received. And one of the most difficult parts about it was pitching it in a way of, okay, this is going on across the world, but why do I, who lives in South Florida, or why do I, who lives in the state of Florida at all, why do I care? I mean, it's Australia. Let them figure it out. That's how most people's mindsets work when it comes to this kind of thing, showcasing environmental issues and stuff. So I had to draw some parallels between what they were experiencing there and what we were experiencing here. And one of the main things that I saw was that, we say this all the time as scientists, but it's the canary in the coal mine. I saw that there were indications of things that were happening there that could happen here, especially, tourism for Australia is a big thing. Tourism for Florida is a huge thing. And when you look at our reefs, that's a main driver of dollars in our economy, along with tourism. And the fires were impacting the reefs there. They were they could be impacted here. I related the fires there to sea level rise here. So I kind of drew some really interesting parallels and found a way to localize it in a way that it resonated with viewers. And I had crazy feedback after it. I always get some people saying this or that about my stories, but this one had so much good feedback. People really, really liked it. And it was it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. But it was well worth it.
I mean, and it showed too. It came together very well. It was well produced. The questions that you asked, all the scientists, the interviews that you had, it was really well done. So bravo.
Thank you.
And you won an award for that, right?
I did, yeah. An international award. So that was even cooler because, most of the time we're just applying for Emmys and stuff, which are local. Well, they're, nationwide, but the international award was really cool. I won a Telly. It was very rewarding, but I think even more rewarding, this is such a lame thing to say, so cliche, but it was just rewarding to kind of tell the story. There were so many people that were impacted by it in Australia. And I knew that as a scientist, but then when you go and see them face to face and see, what they've experienced and the animals, the whole situation was very impactful for me. So the award was very nice to win because I worked so hard on it, but that experience kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word or saying, it lit a fire in me to be like, I need to tell more stories like this. It's just so necessary.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people would love to go to Australia, but what a time to visit when they're experiencing this crisis. And I had actually gone November of 2019, so it was like right before they happened. And so I just wanted to ask, how was that being in the middle of all this, emotion of they feel like they're losing their country, their wildlife, their industry. How was it dealing with that when you're meeting all these people?
Yeah, it's something that you kind of learn when working in news. You have to compartmentalize to a certain point to be able to, sit in even on the daily. I sit in a news studio and they're talking about death and destruction all around you constantly. So you have to be able to leave that at work and go and live your life too. But this was a totally different level. I think there was there's a couple of really significant moments for me. I was looking for some destruction in the Blue Mountains of Australia. And I was driving through these roads with my photographer, and we came upon this house that was still smoldering. We were obviously in a safe area for us to be, but the house was essentially melted. And I walked up, and you kind of have to be careful in those situations because people don't want the press in those times that they're, you know, they're very vulnerable.
Mhm.
They have enough to deal with. The press is annoying. So we were there recording and kind of like showing all the stuff. And this man walks up to me and he's like, "Who are you?" And I told him, you know, we're from America. We're doing this story on climate change. And he was like, "This was my house. It melted." And I was like, "Oh, it melted?" And he's like, "Yeah, this whole entire area was engulfed in flames, and it was so hot that my entire house melted. And we had enough time to get out, me and my wife." He was an older gentleman, and he's like, "I've lived here for 40 years, and all of our family memories in this house. I have children that they don't live here anymore, but you know, I'd like to show you what used to be my house." So we walked through the property, what was left, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, I didn't have time to grab the photo book." So you're really emotionally it was difficult. But he was really grateful that we were telling the story because, again, he'd lived there for so long that he saw the warning signs, and kind of wanted people to know that we need to do something about this. He says to me at one point, "This isn't, you know, this is a climate change disaster." That's what I was a part of. So it was really impactful. I also went and saw a kangaroo that were, you know, a rehab center for them. That's
the one that really got me. I was just like,
oh, yes. Ray Harvey. She is a saint. She literally lives out in the middle of nowhere and takes care of kangaroos. And they think she's a kangaroo. It's really an impressive thing that they have going there. But all their stuff was devastation for miles and miles. So it was really difficult, but again, it was so good to tell the story because they deserve that story to be told. And all of the people that I talked to were so gracious and welcoming when it came to talking to me, and kind of, they were happy that we were doing it. They were happy that someone was kind of telling that story for them.
yeah, I bet just amidst all that heartbreak, it probably was overwhelming feeling like, one, people weren't hearing them or realizing how their actions across the world were actually impacting them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they felt good, I think, empowered to say like, "Hey, America, like you're a big part of this. So
Yeah.
like, look what's going on here." I think that they were grateful for that opportunity for sure.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that going forward, I mean, we talked about, you know, the broadcast news industry staying relevant by kind of diversifying, but in terms of what you do with broadcast meteorology, how important do you think it is that more people in your position kind of take this to heart and take on that higher mission to spread the word?
Yeah, it really important. I mentioned earlier that we call it the station scientist. You know, on a day-to-day basis, most people aren't interacting with someone that's a meteorologist or a climatologist or has expertise in any of those surrounding areas. So we really have a unique platform to educate people. I think a lot of issues that we have globally on many topics come down to educating people better. And this is one that I have had a lot of experience in engaging people with because, like I said, I'm very accessible on Twitter and Instagram and all that. So I have conversations with people that are apprehensive about believing or whatever. And I always take that as an opportunity to kind of educate. And when I'm on air, it's an even bigger platform than on my social media. So I think people in my position, it's definitely, it should be part of their responsibility. And it has grown in recent years. I think it's become more acceptable to kind of have this conversation. It used to be a lot of walking on eggshells when it came to saying the words climate change from a meteorologist on TV because people were worried about the backlash of it. But now I think a lot of us realize that if we don't talk about it now, then we're doing a disservice to people. You know, it's not opinion based. Anything that we're talking about, we try to keep it unpoliticized as well. it's more so a responsibility to be a station scientist and just educate people the best that we can and kind of share some of that knowledge with them, so that we can be a better society and make better decisions and take action in the ways that we need to, with science at the root of those decisions.
Yes. Yes, that's how I want news to be. And Florida Tech, we're your biggest cheerleaders over here. I wish I had pom-poms, but I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to open it up for everyone joining us to ask their own questions. But I want to know, what's next for you? What haven't you accomplished that you would like to work toward in the future?
Man, I loved what I did with Australia. And like I said, that kind of sparked something in me to do more of that. So my whole goal of this year in particular is to just be a better storyteller, to kind of grow in that aspect and do more with that. But as far as long-term goals, I don't know, maybe some network television. That's my ultimate goal in life. So the Today Show would be a dream. Anything.
You were
like
just
that.
on the Today Show.
I was just on the Today Show, but a permanent position would be really nice there. So I'm just going to put it out into the universe for that to happen. But otherwise, we talked about where media will go. So I don't know, just I would love to have a position, that I continue to tell stories and to highlight environmental issues and climate change. And I get to, meet people and connect with people in that way. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Those are good goals. Those are great goals.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, we're crossing them for you. For those of you who didn't know, for last week during Earth Week on Earth Day, Angie was representing Miami for on the Today Show for what the city was doing for Earth Day. So that was very cool. We shared that on our Facebook page. If you guys missed that, go check it out.
Oh, cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It was a unique experience, but it was a lot of fun.
You did a great job. Pulling the kale was hilarious.
Oh my gosh. I after that, my friends that I work out with were like, okay, you should use heavier weights because you couldn't even pull the kale out on national TV. What is wrong with you? So I've been working on my biceps. Don't worry.
Just do more gardening. That should do it.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
All right. So does anyone have any questions for Angie? I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. So if you want to ask in person, or you can feel free to type in the chat. I see a question from Cassie. Cassie, do you want to ask in person?
Yeah, I can. We're starting a broadcast Met studio here in the fall. As a current Met student, I'm mostly in charge of it. So I'm just curious, what advice would you be able to give for those who've not done broadcasting before to be able to make this the best experience it can be for the school and for the students?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing. I wish that they had that when I was there. I believe we had FITV or something like that.
We're working with them on it. They came to us.
Yeah, I didn't actually get involved in that, but it was always like on my list of things to do that I never did. So that's not good on me. Do not follow my lead in that way. But I would say, as far as kind of getting it up and running, I mean, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to figure out better ways to do things. Just get in and practice, and don't be shy about it. I mean, it's a very interesting internal battle when you step in front of a camera for the first time. I love to talk to people, and I'm not really a shy person, and I have a lot of confidence when it comes to public speaking, but it's still, nerve-wracking. So I would say, if you've never done anything broadcast before, you've never had an internship, you've never been in front of a camera in that way, you can practice at home. I mean, I used to set up my phone and practice so that I could just kind of get a better handle on how to say things, what I liked about how I was explaining things and stuff like that. So I would say just a little practice at home, and then go for it when you're in front of the camera, and try to get as much practice as you can. And if you guys have any questions about how to do stuff, you can always ask me or anyone on Twitter.
That's what I need to message you about. When I alluded to you in message, that's what I was going to message you about.
Okay, I can help with whatever. In pre-COVID times, TV studios would let you come in and interview, take a tour rather, and hopefully that'll get back to something that we do. But for now, we can answer all your questions on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever.
Sweet, thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Cassie.
So Scott asked in the chat, do you feel that global warming is reversible? That's a big question.
Oh, big question. So reversible, I don't know if that's the right word, because we're inevitably going to experience a level of it. And we already actually are. I think that's something that people maybe don't realize, that it's already something that is being experienced in many locations. For example, what we saw in Australia. That's why I named it unprecedented, because, well, it was before COVID. So that word now is very overused. But at that time, it was something that we had never seen before, and human caused. So as far as being reversible, I think that there are actions that we can take to make it so that we have a livable place and a pleasant future for ourselves, our children, their children. And we can be innovative. I think as a society, as a global community, there's a lot of solutions that we could find to help combat it. I don't think reversible is possible, because what's out there is out there as far as CO2 emissions, but carbon captured solutions have been talked about. There's a lot of things that, as far as innovation goes, that we can do to keep us from feeling the worst of what scientists warn of. Like I said, there's inevitably going to be some that we will feel, but hopefully we can stop ourselves from getting to the worst of that.
So Julian Field, he is an alum who lives in the UK. He asked, did you get involved with FITV at all while you were at Florida Tech? I know you just kind of mentioned it, but were you a part of that team, or?
I unfortunately wasn't. Like I said, it was on my to-do list to do, but obviously I was busy with volleyball and school, but I think also a part of it was what I said earlier, where I was like a little shy about it. I didn't really know how to go about getting involved. And then I was like, oh, then I'll have to be on TV in front of people. I'll have to go to the studio. I was very shy about it. So I didn't get involved. I did some stuff for radio there. They used to let us have our own radio stations. Does that still happen?
I don't know.
It was fun, but that's the extent of kind of broadcast experience that I had there. I didn't get involved with FITV, but I wish that I had, especially when I started that first job. I was like, man, I could have used a little more practice before I was broadcasting out into people's homes. But nonetheless, I made it well. So.
Yeah, you're doing well. Let's see. We have a few more questions in the chat. Brad White says, we need rain here in Broward County. Can you help with that, please?
Oh my gosh. If I could help with weather patterns and creating them, then I would be rich. I wouldn't have to work anymore. I would just be able to do whatever I want and control the weather. Unfortunately, I can't help you, but the good news is rainy season is starting in a couple of weeks. So you'll likely have plenty of rain to come this season. Those afternoon thunderstorms are right around the corner.
How is hurricane season looking this year, Angie?
Oh, great question. So, all we have at this point are predictions, outlooks, as the National Hurricane Center calls them, and they're looking at an above average season. But I really try not to get too stuck on that when people ask me about hurricane season, because it just takes one hurricane. Hurricane Irma did a lot of damage to the state of Florida, and even if there were no other hurricanes that year, then it would have been considered a below average, but it still impacted us. So it looks like we'll have an above average season, hopefully nothing like what we saw last year as far as activity, but being prepared, I think is the best way, no matter what the outlook looks like. I take that advice, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we never know, really.
We never know. We really never know.
Cindy asked, were you always focused on working in a top TV market? And what advice do you have to help someone advance in a similar trajectory?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be in a higher market. That's one of the the kind of goals that I think most TV people have is to advance into higher markets. You obviously get better opportunities. You have a wider viewership. You get paid more. Like there's a lot of benefits that come with being in a higher market. So it was definitely something that I wanted to do. I could never have stayed in St. Joseph, Missouri for more than 2 years. It was a great experience and I was grateful for it, but I definitely wanted a little bit more. And I still do. I love Miami and I like my job here, but I would like to continue my growth in that area as well.
Awesome. Dr. Ray says hi, says Cassie.
Oh, Dr. Ray. Cool. Hi, Dr. Ray. Long time no chat. We actually published something together. So hi, Dr. Ray.
Oh, that's so cool. She said he's dealing with house flooding issues or he would have been on this call. So hopefully he's okay.
Yikes. That's no fun. Being a homeowner, difficult stuff.
I know. Does anyone else have any questions? We have a few more minutes before Angie is going to have to go and do her second segment of the day, I believe.
Yeah, at 4:00, I'm on air again. I'm surprised Ryan Moon doesn't have any questions for me.
Come on, Ryan.
How did you find athletics helped or hurt your trajectory to, where you wanted to go, and the academic side and the athletic side and the combination?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. I put you on the spot and then you came up with something good. So it helped. It only helped because obviously when you're an athlete, you're balancing a lot of things. You're wearing a lot of hats, the student hat, the athletics hat, and living your life in college too. So balancing all of that was definitely something that I took into my professional life too. When it came to, I'm a meteorologist, but I'm also a reporter and I'm a human too. I live my life too. So I think in that aspect, definitely helped drive too. I think that as a student athlete, you have to have that drive to even get to that point. You had to have that drive. So I took that over into my career. And then working with people, it's totally a quality that you need to learn to work in a professional environment, and being on a team and having to work with people that maybe sometimes you're not friends outside of whatever it is you're doing, or you don't really like their personality, but you have to figure out a way to successfully work with them. And that's something that also I took into my professional life from my student athlete life and has served me in many, many ways. So all those aspects, being a hard worker, I mean, you name it, being an athlete is hard, and it set me up really well for my job too. Great question, Ryan.
Great answer. Thank you for the opportunity.
Anything for you.
Hello, Angie. My name is Fitz. I currently live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm 23. I'm a college student, and I'm also a fan. I watch you on NBC6 every week. You do a phenomenal job. Thank you for your service.
You're too sweet, Fitz. Thank you for watching. I love to chat to a viewer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anytime. My question for you is, how do you balance work and your personal life?
Oh man. Hopefully well. That's a good question. I think I said earlier that you have to learn how to compartmentalize when it comes to working in news, especially if you're a news anchor. They have it. It's another level for them because they're the ones that are actually talking about the death and destruction. But for me, it's all about compartmentalizing. I like to work hard, but I also like to have a lot of fun. I had this conversation with my mom just days ago about how I need to have that kind of balance in my life to be successful on all levels. So how I do it, I don't know. It's a juggling act. It might all be a facade. I'm not sure, but so far so good. I try not to take myself too seriously. And I think having an enjoyable job that I like to go to also helps with it not being such a dread to wake up on Monday morning and go to work. So all of that plays a role. And then I just surround myself with good people, people that I like to spend time with and decompress with. And I guess that's the secret. I don't know. If you have something better, let me know. I'm open to suggestions.
For me, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I really believe in time management. Like once I'm done with my schoolwork or I leave my job, I try to leave it there. I don't try to bring it home, but easier said than done. Because when I'm at home, it's like I'm constantly thinking about the next thing I have to get done. So I think it's more so just like time management skills and just through a lot of prayer, mostly.
Yeah.
That's how I.
Totally. I think COVID made that difficult for people. I found myself many times working at all hours of the day because I was working from home. So time management, balance, it's all part of adulting that I think we're all still figuring out, and we continue to figure out every day. Thanks for your question though, Fitz, and thanks for watching.
You're welcome, and thank you and for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I think we have time for one more question. I can come up with something, but
any takers?
I have a question if nobody else does. So Brad in the chat kind of alluded to like how scary hurricanes are made to seem in the news, and sometimes they are. And I know my mom, who lives up north in Vermont, she is so scared of coming to Florida during hurricane season. What would you say to folks who don't live kind of in Florida or where hurricanes hit about how to kind of make it seem less scary and how to be prepared?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, one of the big things that I actually pitched a story on this because we have so many people moving to South Florida during COVID because we essentially were open. So many New Yorkers and people from California, just a lot of influx of people that have never dealt with storms before. And so as far as advice, I think just having some trusted source to go to is your best bet. I know that it can feel like it's overhyped. It can feel like it's made out to be more than it is, but I can guarantee you that meteorologists, especially, we are not trying to make it out to be more than it is. I can count millions of times that people have written to me after storms and been like, it was no big deal. Well, yeah, it was no big deal because it ended up to be no big deal. We do our best to forecast and we do our best to inform people and you know, with the information that we have, but it's still an inexact science. We're still forecasting. We don't have all the answers. And unfortunately, until we're getting really close in time to when it arrives. But my best advice is to be prepared, you know, the same kind of thing of how you prepare for hurricane season every year. That's why I mentioned it only takes one. So doing that checklist of all your stuff in order is a great plan. And then having, you know, knowing your route, if you had to evacuate, knowing what kind of floodplain you live in, all of those things are going to help you feel more confident when there is a looming threat. And then just staying connected and getting information from a trusted source, I think. Again, you can write to me on Twitter. I'll answer. Ask Ryan Moon. He's always harassing me about these things when there's a storm out there. So I'm happy to answer anyone's questions in that time and kind of make you feel a little bit better if you need it too.
And I imagine it's obviously better to be over prepared than to think, oh, it's no big deal, and then do nothing, and then that's when you get, you know, in a
Absolutely.
bad situation.
Absolutely. Definitely. And, you know, the internet is a great resource to figure out what you need to do to prepare for a hurricane too in advance. So, and it's always better to just have all that stuff that you need. You know, do you have hurricane impact windows? A lot of people don't know the answer to that question in their house, especially if they're renters, especially if they haven't lived in the state of Florida or along the coast before. So all of these things are good things to do in advance. That way, when there is a tropical threat, then we don't have to think about all that and we're not frantic.
Right. Well, that is all the time we have today. So I just wanted to once again thank you, Angie, for taking an hour between your two segments today to chat with us and give our students some advice and talk to us about your experience in your career in Florida Tech. It's been super fun talking to you and getting to know you.
Now, Jillian, you can't get rid of me.
So I'll come down to Miami and, you know, you come visit us on campus, and any alum at any time, if you're watching, you can come visit campus, pop into the brand new Alumni Center here. We are always open for you to be your home away from home. So,
well, and thank you so much for having me. Thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us for an hour on your lunch break. I hope I answered everyone's questions. And again, you can find me Angie NBC6. That's where I am on all my platforms. If you have any lingering questions or any advice that you're looking for, I'm happy to help. And again, Jillian, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.